a man visited a psychic of some local repute. In a dark and gloomy room, gazing at the tarot cards laid out before her, the tarot reader delivered the bad news. There's no easy way to say this, so I'll just be blunt. Your mother-in-law will die a violent and horrible death this year. Visibly shaken, the man stared at the woman's lined face, then at the single flickering candle, then down at his hands. He took a few deep breaths to compose himself. He simply had to know. He met the tarot reader's gaze, steadied his voice, and asked, "Will I get away with it?" A new school teacher was getting to know the children by asking them their name and what their father did for a living. The first little girl said, "My name is Kelly, and my daddy is a builder." The second child said, "My name is Kylie, and my daddy works in a factory." And so it went on until one little boy said, "My name is David, and my dad is a stripper in a gay bar." The teacher gasped in horror and quickly changed the subject. Later in the schoolyard, the teacher approached David privately and asked if it was really true that his father danced naked in a gay bar. David blushed and said, "No, he's really a politician, but I'm just too embarrassed to tell anyone." So, I had a housewarming party last night. The next morning, I came downstairs to see someone I wasn't well acquainted with, but a friend of a friend, lying on the kitchen floor. I told him, "Time to go home, mate. Up you get." I helped pick him up, but he immediately fell back down again. "All right, you're obviously still drunk. Where do you live so I can drive you home?" 24 Longhouse Avenue, came the mumbled reply from the man. So, I picked him up again to help him get to my car, but every single time I let go of him to stand by himself, he immediately fell back on the floor in a heap. After the same incident occurring 10 times, I finally got him in the car and to the address he mentioned. Once out of the car and falling back down 3 more times, I managed to drag him to the front door and rang the doorbell. His wife answered, and I explained that her husband had a bit too much to drink last night. "That's true, my husband does like to get pissed," said the wife, "but where's his wheelchair?" A pastor's wife decided to get him a bicycle for his birthday to help him start a fitness routine. The pastor gave it a shot, but after a few weeks of a regular routine, he realized it probably wasn't his thing. One day, he was riding past a freshly mowed lawn and a young man sitting on the porch. The young man said, "Hey, preacher, good to see you getting your ride in." The pastor stops to catch his breath and says, "Thanks, but I don't think I'll be riding much longer." "It's not my thing," the young man replied. "That's a shame. It's a real nice bike." The pastor looks over at the mower and says, "You have a nice mower. Looks brand new." The young man replies, "Well, I only used it a few times, but I just recently found out I'll have to move to a city for my job and won't have a lawn to mow." "Wait a minute," the young man says, "what about a trade?" "I won't need my mower in the city, and you don't want your bike." The pastor thinks for a second and says, "Done." The next week, the pastor gets out his nearly new mower to try it out. But try as he might, he just couldn't get it started. He had been yanking the cord with all his strength for 5 minutes straight when he sees the young man riding by on the bicycle. He calls out, "Hey, this mower you gave me won't start. Did you cuss it out real good?" asked the young man. "What?" "Heavens no," the pastor exclaimed. The young man explained, "Well, it doesn't start unless you cuss it out first." "Son," the preacher said, "I'm a man of the cloth. I have to set an example for my flock. I don't use profanity, and in fact it's been so long, I probably don't remember how." "Well," the young man says as he rides away, "you just keep pulling that cord. It'll come back to you soon enough." 2 blondes went away on an adventure activity weekend in the country. The archery and rifle events ran smoothly, but during the hunting expedition, the pair became hopelessly lost. They were unable to get a signal on their cell phones, and all their cries for help remained unanswered, so they sat down forlornly and discussed what to do next. Then, eyeing the weaponry, one said, "Didn't the guide say that we should shoot into the air to summon help if we got lost?" "You're right," said the other blonde, and she grabbed the bag containing the weapons. But after another 2.5 hours and 10 shots, still no one came. "Do you think anyone will find us?" asked the first blonde dejectedly. "I hope so," said the other. "We're almost out of arrows." So, two blondes decided to go on a hunting trip to see what it's all about. After a few days of camping, they finally bagged a deer and were dragging it by the rear legs back to the truck. But the antlers kept getting stuck in the mud. One blonde says to the other, "This is tough, but we only got about a mile left to reach the truck." Another hunter happened upon them and saw their dilemma. He told them, "If you drag the deer the other way, the antlers won't stick in the mud." So the blondes give it a try, and it worked. The first blonde says, "That hunter was right. This way is a lot easier." The second blonde says, "Sure was, but now we're 2 miles from the truck." A young woman named Betty was doing some shopping one day when she wandered into a kitchenware shop and saw a cylindrical metal object. "What's this?" she asked the assistant. "It's a thermos flask," the assistant replies. "What does it do?" Betty asks, still unsure. "It keeps hot things hot and cold things cold," the assistant replies. Betty thought that was quite marvelous, so she buys one and takes it to her beauty salon the next day. "Look what I've got," she tells the other ladies excitedly. It's a thermos flask. The ladies are impressed. "But what does it do?" they ask. "It keeps hot things hot and cold things cold," Betty replies. "And what have you got in it?" they ask. Betty beams a proud smile. 2 cups of coffee and a chocolate ice cream. A woman with really hairy underarms boards a crowded bus. Unable to find a seat, she settles for hanging onto one of the poles. A drunk man next to her stares at her for 3 minutes, then tells her, "I love a woman who does aerobics." The woman replies angrily, "I don't do aerobics." The drunk man then looks at the woman and says, "Then how did you get your leg up so high?" A guy meets this girl in a bar and asks, "May I buy you a drink?" Looking unimpressed at the man, she replies, "Okay, but it won't do you any good." A little later he asks, "May I buy you another drink?" "Okay, but it still won't do you any good." He invites her up to his apartment and she replies, "Okay, but it won't do you any good." They get to his apartment and he says, "You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. I want you for my wife." She says, "Oh, that's different. Send her in."